Hi, I'm Reyes Smith, and I'm here with Adesola Raji.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to be discussing the first chapter of Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris. The name of the chapter is Go Carolina.
Yes, so our specific topic today will be discrimination against boys who don't like sports. Let's jump right into the discussion.
Well, I think that everyone is entitled to their own opinion and their personal preferences,
Yes.
but sadly that doesn't protect us from the judgment of other people. It's like no matter what you believe in or who you are, someone's always going to have something to say about what you're doing, whether it's positive or negative.
Mm-hmm. And especially for these boys who don't like sports, physical activity, the judgment is even worse on them because they get picked on more. They're not popular, so it's just worse for them.
Exactly. And I've been in several situations where I've seen boys be outcasted because they're not like everyone else. They don't like sports. They're more into the arts or more feminine activities, in which we'll be addressing that later on in this discussion. And, this just describes David Sedaris perfectly because he wasn't into sports.
And he liked art and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. In his biography, Me Talk Pretty One Day, it's implied that boys who don't take an interest in sports are considered abnormal and absurd.
Yes.
And that just baffles me because why are they abnormal? Because they don't want to partake in sports. That should not be the case. And on page 5 of his book in chapter 1, it states, you could turn up your nose at the president or Coke or even God, but there were names for boys who didn't like sports. And this just shows that the way people in Carolina perceive boys who lack masculinity, it's not right.
It's not. And it's just not in Carolina. This is all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
People these days, they tend to treat these boys who act like this, they tend to treat them more differently than they would treat boys who are normal,
Exactly.
And these boys, they get scrutinized and manipulated into being something they're not, something they don't want to be. And that it destroys their personality. It shatters their world. And as a result of that, they end up growing up to despise the world for what it's done to them.
Exactly, and there is definitely some truth to that. But some boys turn out that way. Not all the boys turn out hating the world. Some, like David Sedaris again, they turn out for the better. They end up doing something with their life. They end up enjoying their life and loving who they are. And it's just...
Maybe that counseling, because, he went through speech therapist as a kid. Yeah, so, yeah, I feel like if a person, if they receive counseling, if they receive help, they can overcome this part of their life and become something better. But let's point out that just because they like these things, that they act this way, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or that they need help.
Exactly. It's anyone who needs the right support system.
Yes.
Whether there is something wrong with you or not, depending who you're around and how they affect you will affect how you turn out. And on my spare time, I've read a lot of reviews and responses on the book, one of them being from Book Rags, and it states that he doesn't fit in. During his childhood, Sedaris becomes aware that he shares his more creative and less cerebral personality with his mother and his sister. And people constantly associate a certain activity with a specific gender, and that's not always the case. Just because something is not strenuous or requires a lot of muscle or masculinity and strength does not mean that it is any less important.
And what she just said earlier about the cerebral personality, it just meant that he liked doing stuff his mother did instead of what his father did. Like, he had more in common with his mother and his sisters, and that's something that sometimes it's looked down upon. Like, why would you have more in common with your sisters than your father? But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Like, most in situations, there are people who only have mothers and not fathers, and they have to look up to their mother to see what's right and what's wrong. And that's not David Sedaris' situation here, but it's not that it's wrong for him to have more in common with his sisters and his mother.
Exactly, because it's very common to see a one-parent household, and it usually is the mother, and the kids are heavily influenced by who they are raised by. And I think we can change this by addressing the issue, actually coming forward with it, not pretending like it doesn't exist,
helping these kids out, showing them what's right and what's wrong, not necessarily saying that that what they're liking is wrong, but that maybe they can like something else, you know. Maybe we can help them embrace what they like, you know, help them live with it. That they won't care what other people think about them. They won't bring themselves down, have low self-esteem, stuff like that, you know. Maybe that's how we should go around with this whole thing, this whole problem here.
We need to break the stereotype.
Yes,
that if something is not masculine, then
or feminine.
Exactly.
No, there's no black or white. There's a gray line. There's not just strictly masculine, not just strictly feminine. And you know, there's some activities that aren't just masculine or feminine, you know. Some boys do it and it's masculine, girls do it, it's feminine, you know. It's like completely different. So, and it's the same activity, so you won't be able to distinguish. Exactly, they use different styles when performing it, you know, so you won't be able to distinguish masculinity or femininity. Like, it's just
we just need to come together and tackle this problem.
Yes.
All right, well, thanks for spending your time with us, guys, and stay tuned for the next blog post.